Hello, this short presentation is about my graduation research about convincing tenants to participate in sustainable renovation. The main purpose of this research is the ever-rising pressure on fossil fuels. Since the 1980s, this pressure is increasing rapidly, and when we look at the built environment, almost 41% of the global energy consumption is consumed by this environment. And when we look at the residential sector, which totals 54% of the total environment, this is a very large sector. In the Netherlands, which is the scope of this research, almost 31% of all dwellings belongs to the social housing sector. This equals 2.2 million dwellings. So when we compare that to in the Netherlands, almost 31% of the housing stock belongs to the social housing sector. This equals 2.2 million dwellings, and when we look at the amount of housing associations in the Netherlands, which equals 230, they have a lot of property. When we look at the energetic quality of these dwellings, and especially the older ones, it's quite subpar. At this moment, the dwellings, only 20% of the dwellings have energy label B or higher. Still, these dwellings are very functional, high quality. So housing associations should renovate a large part of this housing stock, because with renovation these dwellings can still go on for 40, 50, 60, maybe 70 years. But the split incentive comes to mind here. First of all, a housing association invests capital in the dwelling. The dwelling gets renovated, the energy usage is reduced, and living comfort is improved. But on the other hand, the occupier of the dwelling, which is the tenant, gets all the benefits. So the housing association invests capital, but they have, in the end, no benefits. Therefore, a rent increase should be mandatory. Housing associations can implement this rent increase, but at this moment they have to cope with one big problem: the tenant themselves. The tenant, most of the time, does not agree with a rent increase, because they think, I have a good dwelling, I have a good dwelling, so it's okay. I don't need to pay extra rent. It's okay at this moment. Therefore, my goal of this research is to convince tenants to participate by finding the following two relations. First of all, the relations between renovation measures is analyzed, and what acceptable rent increase for tenants is okay. Furthermore, the relation between renovation measures and the characteristics of respondents is analyzed. This has been done by distributing a survey underneath the tenants of Brabant Wonen, where this research is conducted. Brabant Wonen is a middle-large housing association in the municipality of 's-Hertogenbosch, and eventually 1,500 tenants have been approached. First of all, some characteristics have been asked about the respondents. Most importantly, their energy using profile is asked. On the right side, the energy using profiles are shown. This differs between E's, which means they have absolutely no interest in the environment, to the environmental people. These people are interested in the environment. Also, another important profile is costs. These people are very cost-minded and try to reduce costs at all time. The third thing that has been asked are some questions about sustainability. These are first asked to validate the energy using profile, but they are also asked to get more knowledge about sustainability and sustainable renovation. Most important part of the survey is the conjoint choice experiment. This experiment can be shown in this figure. Tenants or respondents have been given 9 choice sets of 2 renovation packages. These packages differ on 5 different attributes. When all this input is analyzed afterwards, different renovation measures can be compared to each other and what the most important ones are. The results. After distributing the survey under the tenants, the following results show. First of all, respondents are very concerned about rising energy pricing, and they are open to sustainable renovation. The theoretical research showed otherwise, so this is quite interesting. Moreover, involvement in the process does not seem necessary for most respondents. Theoretical research showed that how involving tenants more in the process would convince them even more afterwards. But this research showed that tenants are very concerned about the energy bill, but involvement doesn't need to seem very necessary. Also, respondents think very positive about living cost guarantee. What does this mean? Well, when the housing association guarantees a certain rent of a certain energy cost decrease, and this decrease is not been set, then the difference is being repaid to the respondents. Furthermore, respondents think positive about living cost guarantee. What is the living cost guarantee? Well, when a housing association guarantees a certain energy reduction, and this reduction has not been made, then the housing association has to repay the difference to the tenant. Finally, there are some significant differences found between the energy using profiles I mentioned before. This is also nice input for the conjoint choice experiment, because now the tenants can be segmented between the energy using profiles. The most important result about this conjoint choice experiment is the environmental group. This group can be seen as the innovators of a neighborhood. They act very positive towards sustainability and sustainable renovation, and they even accept lower cost savings at the end of the month. Furthermore, the environmental people are most open to renovation, and as expected, the EASE group, the people that are not very concerned about the environment, are least open to renovation. But what does this mean? Well, for a housing association, the following can be guaranteed. First of all, the living cost guarantee should be investigated very carefully. It's a really interesting way to convince tenants to participate in sustainable renovation. Moreover, the results show that in segmenting tenants can be very interesting. Why? Well, for instance, the environmental group can be approached as the innovators in a neighborhood. Normally, tenants that are harder to convince try to listen more to their neighbors than to a higher institution like housing associations. It has to be noted finally that the harder to convince tenants have not been reached with this research. For instance, the elderly did not respond a lot to this research. One of the most important conclusions is that the environmental group can be approached as innovators in a neighborhood. These people are the ones that can convince the more harder to convince tenants to participate in sustainable renovation. Finally, it has to be noted that the more harder to convince tenants, such as elderly or non-Western immigrants, have not been reached with this research. This is a pity because these people are very hard to convince and hard to reach, so in the future research it should be investigated to distribute the survey by mail or otherwise. Thank you very much for listening.